Chargers second round pick Tre Harris has been non-existent through 2 preseason games, and it's not time to panic yet, but he better get going soon if he wants to be a part of the offense in 2025.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Droegemeier, and we've been covering the Chargers now for 10 seasons, but this is our 8th year as the host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. Thank you to the everydayers out there for making us your first listen. To make sure you never miss the show, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from. David, what do we got today?
Daniel, whenever you grab a new weapon in the draft, you want to see them be able to make an impact and make plays right away. And unfortunately, with Tre Harris, we have not seen it manifest in a preseason game yet, but not quite concerned about that quite yet. Also, have the Chargers been building up Trey Lance to potentially trade him? I think that's an interesting scenario we got to get into. And I think Joe Alt is fantastic, but he has some stiff competition to get to all-pro status in his second year in the league.
Absolutely, he does. Even if, his offensive coordinator is calling him an all-pro and his head coach is calling him a future Hall of Famer, still going to be really tough to catch up to some of those guys at the top. But I do want to start this buy or sell Tuesday with one of the kind of bigger overreactions I think that I've seen on social media through 2 preseason games, which the Chargers have a little bit more, right? Having had played twice as many games as every other team except for the Lions, we've seen a little bit more, but unfortunately we haven't seen much from second round pick Tre Harris. And I think it's put more under the microscope because of what we have seen from Keandre Lambert-Smith, who also kind of was non-existent in the second preseason game as well, but he doesn't have the second round pick next to his name like Tre Harris does. And I think this is the buy or sell I want to get into today, David, is this. Buy or sell, it's time to be concerned about Tre Harris.
Yeah, I'm going to sit here and understand why this is an overreaction that's out there, because he's a second round pick, right? You want him to be able to come in right away and be able to make plays and look outstanding from the very, very beginning. And of course, you want to see him go out there in the preseason and go look like a man among boys, right? He's a second round pick. He's playing up against guys that are most likely not going to be factoring into the, plans of their football teams that they're playing with. So you want to see that. And in practice, it's been up and down. We've heard good days. We've heard some bad days. But I think right now it is far too early to make any declarative statements about Tre Harris and who he's going to be in his NFL career. So with that being said, I am going to sell it.
And I think the nice thing is, especially with the Keenan Allen signing, you don't necessarily need him to be a huge part of the offense right away. We talked about how that would take some of the pressure off of these young wide receivers, having a veteran like that in the room. But I do think that, of course, as one of the bigger kind of hype men around Tre Harris, I would have loved to see him have a couple of big games. And there's several reasons why he hasn't. As far as, there have been times he's gotten open and he hasn't been found by the quarterback. And through 2 games, he has only 2 targets and hasn't been able to bring in either of them. In the last game, had a chance for a touchdown, got interfered with on the play, but a chance to make a tough play, kind of make have a moment right there, and was unable to come through. I would say I went back and watched him, and I mean the run blocking has actually been really good. So not something that's going to make him a great receiver at the NFL level, but it's not all negatives for Tre Harris, even in the preseason games. We know he's had a couple of big practices. But there also have been some concerns about drops at practice as well. So we'll see. But it does feel like, there has been some kind of struggle to separate, struggling with the releases at times as someone who played in an Ole Miss offense that gave him a lot of advantages from that perspective. And now you have Keenan Allen to help you work on the release game and the route running and all of those things that do have to get better. I think the thing about Tre Harris that was always kind of nice when watching him was he didn't always have to be wide open to make the catch. He was pretty good in contested catch situations. He didn't need a big window to be able to make a play. And we've seen that, especially, the play he made in front of Troy Dye, going behind himself to go grab that, securing it in the back of the end zone. We know the talent is there, but it is taking a little longer than I would have thought for him to be able to show it. So we'll see what he can do in week 3 of the preseason. But let's get to this buy or sell here from John Clark, who says, buy or sell Trey Lance having more value as a trade piece than as a QB2 on this roster. This is an interesting one, Dave, because obviously he's been the better of the backup quarterbacks so far. But depending on what the trade looks like, I mean, that might be enticing for the Chargers, who have another, veteran with a lot of experience in Taylor Heinicke.
For sure. I mean, I can understand it. And hey, John, I like where your head's at there, trying to find an opportunity to create some value. And I think with your backup quarterback, God forbid anything happens to the starter, right? I'm not even going to, put that out there. But if that does happen, you want to have somebody that you can tailor an offense around, that can move your offense forward, that can move the chains, that you can actually keep everything afloat, right? That's what you want from your backup quarterback. And I think what we've seen throughout the preseason so far is that Trey Lance is starting to become that guy, somebody that you can trust to be able to go out there and make plays, not only with his legs, which has kind of been what his calling card has been throughout his short NFL career, but he's starting to be more of a complete passer, starting to show some touch, starting to show some accuracy, and being able to stay in the pocket and be able to try to look down the field and make the throws. I think it just took some time to get him in front of the right coaching staff, and it seems like whatever Jim Harbaugh and his staff is preaching, it is definitely being received by Trey Lance. So I think right now, as crazy as it sounds, and as, really, adverse as I was with them bringing in Trey Lance and not really understanding it, he's made me a believer. So I'm going to sell that they trade Trey Lance, because I feel like he's the type of quarterback that they want to be backing up Justin Herbert.
I think it also has a lot to do with what happens over these next couple of games too, right? I mean, his stock is very high right now, and I'm sure if they, wanted to trade him, they could probably find some suitors for that. I don't think it'd be worth them what he could bring as a potential backup, because he's shown clearly he's the better guy to go and potentially win you a game if Justin Herbert were to get hurt. The hard thing about this is, like, Justin Herbert could stay healthy the entire season, and then you're missing out on a potential draft pick for a guy that never even touched the field in a meaningful way. So I think that is the hard thing. And to me, it comes down to what is it going to cost. I know Louis Benjamin was like, hey, they wouldn't do it for a 5. They would do it for a 4. Man, with their 5th round picks that they've had.
Yeah, they probably would do it for a 5.
KOS, Cam, Tarheeb Still, Rondé Gadsden, all those guys have looked good in their young career so far.
Sure
maybe they would do it for a 5th round pick. Maybe that would be the right move. But it does feel like if you are really concerned about Justin Herbert getting injured again, Trey Lance clearly gives you the better chance to win as we see it right now. But the most important thing he's done so far, and it's a huge thing for a backup quarterback, he hasn't put the ball in harm's way through 2 games. And for him to have turned it over 6 times in a preseason game last year, but to be 2 games pretty much flawless in that part of the game is pretty big. But let's get to this one here from Edgar-esque, which is a very pressing question considering this conversation, and it's buy or sell. The Chargers will only have 2 quarterbacks making the 53-man roster to start the season. David, I think both of us only had 2 on our initial 53-man roster prediction. Are you sticking with that now?
I am. Absolutely, I'm buying it. I hate the idea, roster construction wise, of carrying more than 2 quarterbacks on your active 53-man roster. I just feel like that can be better suited with another offensive lineman, another defensive lineman, another corner, another edge rusher, just one of those positions where you're going to need more depth. I just feel like it would be better suited when you have a quarterback the caliber of a Justin Herbert and you know what he's capable of. I just feel like you only need one backup, and you need to have that extra roster spot where it is more needed.
And I think this is the crazy thing, right? Like, when is the last time the Chargers had their 3rd quarterback suit up for a game? I started going down the rabbit hole, and then me and David never would have recorded this show had I gotten to the bottom of it. But if you know, and if you can remember in the chat, make sure to let us know in the YouTube comments if you're on there. Because, I mean, I was thinking back, like, obviously there's the famous Billy Volek playoff game, you know what I mean? I feel like Charlie Whitehurst maybe got into a game at some point, but I wasn't sure if he was the primary backup at that point, or if he was
Jesus ever did get into a game, man. That's a good one.
I mean, at least he didn't with the Chargers, right? He ended up getting some run elsewhere, which might be kind of muddying the waters. But yeah, I don't know if as a 3rd quarterback, like, we're talking 20 plus years since the Chargers have actually needed whoever that 3rd quarterback is to play in a game. So, it has DJU shown you enough that he can be an emergency 3rd string quarterback. If Justin Herbert goes into a game banged up, could you elevate him to be the 3rd string guy? Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Well, Right now, he looks like a perfect player because he's only thrown like 3 balls and he has like a passer rating of like 120 because it's such a limited sample size. But either way, I don't think there's any way you can reasonably keep 3 quarterbacks with the hard decisions you have coming up at running back, safety, linebacker, edge rusher, cornerback, just to name a few, right? So I don't think there's any way you can make a solid argument for keeping 3 right now, especially obviously because Taylor Heineke played pretty poorly in his first outing. But we still have more to get into, including if this could be an all-pro season for Joe Alt in his first year in the NFL playing left tackle. We're getting into all that and more today's Locked On Chargers podcast. This episode is presented by Yahoo Fantasy. It's the best time of the year. NFL kickoff is almost here, and that means fantasy football season is back in full swing. And this year, Yahoo Fantasy is turning things up with a fantasy football experience like never before. This year, me, David, and the Locked On Chargers podcast are playing on a Yahoo Fantasy League, and you should too, whether you're a first-timer or a veteran making your millionth league. I did my first ever fantasy football season on Yahoo. I took Adrian Peterson the year that he got suspended for an entire year. So it wasn't a great first experience, but I've made my way back to Yahoo over the last few years, being able to find something that actually fits what me and my league want. But also they have a bunch of great new stuff because to celebrate 28 years of fantasy football greatness, Yahoo is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days in August. To kick it off, they just dropped the Yahoo Fantasy Guillotine Leagues, a killer new way to play fantasy football on Yahoo, where the lowest scoring team gets eliminated each week until there's only one team left standing. With the season around the corner, now's your time to get your league together and give this new mode a try. If you're more into the classics, you can still play in the head-to-head private leagues or join a public league. Stay tuned for more killer announcements and start playing Yahoo Fantasy Football at yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. David, let's get into more storylines and overreactions about the Chargers through 2 preseason games. And thank you to the everydayers out there who just, came out with an outpouring of buy or sells today on Instagram, on Twitter, on the voicemail. We couldn't get the voicemails to work today, but we'll have those going by the next fan show that we do. So thank you to everyone who's contributed in any way that they find fit. But let's get to this one, a good one, I would say here, David. From Kuhani on Twitter, who says, buy or sell, with Joe Alt switching to left tackle, he makes his mark by becoming all-pro this season. So I think we could open this up to, first or second team all-pro. I mean, Rashawn Slater got one. I count it. It's still tough. I mean, even making it into the top 2 at left tackle is still incredibly, incredibly difficult, to the fact where, Rashawn Slater's only done it once in his 4 seasons, 3 that he's been healthy. David, could Joe Alt surprise everyone and do that in his first year at left tackle?
I mean, talk about trying to make the Hall of Fame, right? If you want to try to do that, then it requires you doing things like this throughout your NFL career. But I'm going to sell it. I just think right now, going into year 2, that putting that level of expectations on him, number 1, I think is unfair. And number 2, he has quite a bit to climb. I mean, his pass block, grade last year was a 79.4, which in his rookie season is fantastic. There's really nothing to be upset about whatsoever. Now, if we want to get in the conversation of first, second team All-Pro, we're talking about pass blocking grades in the 90s, upper 90s, 94.1 for Tristan Wirfs, 95.8 for Jordan Mailata. We're talking like just the absolute top of the position. You have to get, there's quite a bit of space that, we have to grow and get to from Joe Alt to get where he is to get there. Now, I firmly believe he has all of the tools and the ability to be able to get there someday. I just think that it's too much to put on him in year 2 when he's already had to boomerang from right tackle back to left tackle, and how he's playing left tackle again with pretty, small amount of time to be able to get ready to be Justin Herbert's blind side protector.
At least at the NFL level, right?
Right.
I mean, I was obviously talking smack to the Chargers for putting him there too much when Rashawn Slater was
you were.
Obviously it paid off now. So, I have to sell it just because, those 2 guys that you talked about, Jordan Mailata, Tristan Wirfs, were the first and second team all-pro left tackles this year. And that was with, Trent Williams kind of banged up and out of the conversation, and he has the name brand value that's always going to be hard to pass, right? Last year, Rashawn Slater was 4th in AP All-Pro voting at the position, so a couple spots away from moving into that second team All-Pro again. Deion Dawkins, another guy that was in front of Rashawn Slater, all guys that Joe Alt would have to catch up to. But to put it in plainer terms, at least as far as what he would have to do, Jordan Mailata, 14 pressures, 1 sack allowed. Tristan Wirfs, 12 pressures, 0 sacks allowed for entire seasons.
That's
right?
a joke.
It's a joke. Joe Alt gave up 20 pressures and 6 sacks last year. So that's the kind of jump that he would have to make. I think the 6 sacks is, in part because Justin Herbert's mobility was affected, right? I think that number is a little bloated. But either way, that's the kind of jump you'd have to make to be an all-pro because there's just a lot of really good players there. I'm very bullish on what Joe Alt will be able to do, though. Let's get to this next one here because I think this is interesting. JM says, buy or sell. If Joe Alt makes all-pro, he will stay as left tackle next year. This is interesting because, I think it's pretty hard to make any argument, right, that he should be left tackle when Rashawn Slater comes back. But if he messes around and gets first team all pro, is there a conversation that happens behind the scenes, David?
Absolutely there is. I don't know how you could possibly not have that conversation. Like, we're talking about a left tackle prospect that's probably one of the best in the last 10 years that's coming out of the draft and into the NFL. A guy that has everything that you could possibly want from the tackle position. Incredible size at 6'8" with unbelievable wingspan and great strength, incredibly smart, like everything that you would want, all the makeup that you would want from a left tackle. Joe Alt possesses all of that. So if you're telling me that he goes out here this year and is more dominant and better than any other left tackle in the league, then how could you not have that conversation? Because that's something that, as great as Rashawn Slater has shown to be, he has never accomplished that level of success throughout his NFL career. So Joe Alt messes around and does that. I don't know how you can't have the conversation. I think it would probably be unprofessional not to.
And I don't doubt the conversation would happen. But I do think that at the end of the day, unless Rashawn Slater is physically unable to play the position, he's going to be the left tackle of this team. He was just paid to be it. And the other thing is,
for sure,
is we've actually seen Joe Alt play right tackle at a high level. Rashawn Slater's never played right tackle. So to ask him to do that, in year 6, right, to switch sides like that without any kind of proof of concept might not make your team better. And at the end of the day, that's what Jim Harbaugh is going to do, is put the best team out there. And even if he's all pro at left tackle, second team, it's like, oh, okay, well, at least they tied, right? If he's first team, you have to have the conversation. I just don't see it. Like, I just think that no matter what, you're better off with Rashawn Slater at left tackle with the experience he's had there, and Joe Alt, who I think could probably still throw his name into the hat as a right tackle all-pro as well, especially with Lane Johnson getting up there in years. And you're talking about generational tackle prospects. The only guy I can think of thought more highly than Joe Alt in recent memory is probably Penei Sewell. So, yeah, he's in that category. Yeah. Let's get to this one here from Bolt Up, my friends. Buy or sell, Joe Ortiz is going to add more to the offensive line, specifically the interior, before the start of the regular season, but watch, they won't use this because of my name. Well, his name is something I honestly don't know if I can say on YouTube, but we're never not going to use your question because of what your name is unless there's no way around it. But we went with the @ on this one. David, this is a question I think a lot of people are asking, and to me, I mean, I'm not going to, put anything past Joe Ortiz. He's shown us he'll make late additions and keep turning over every stone. I think the hard thing for me is I cannot buy that we're going to see a needle-moving addition to that room before the season.
That's where I'm at with it as well. And also, I feel like with Jamari Sawyer coming back in better shape, I think that's going to be an upgrade and an improvement within itself. Andre James has a ton of starting experience in this league. I think he's a very more than adequate backup. And also, they did just add another, I know, right? I know. We're talking about
well, no, I know. It's Andre James just playing randomly at left guard with, we hadn't heard him playing left guard at all at practice. And in the preseason game, they decided to throw him out there at left guard. I don't get it. Why are we doing that now?
That's
you wanted to give him a chance. Yeah, that was the only reason I laughed a little bit when you did that, because it just made me think, that's kind of ridiculous. The dude's never played guard before, and we're just randomly throw him out there in this preseason game. I don't know. It was crazy to me.
No, yeah, I don't agree with it either. I don't know why they ever did it, but also they did add another swing tackle. Former Raven David Sharp after a tryout. They tried out a couple of tackles last Saturday, and that's who they ended up signing bringing in to kind of replace that swing tackle now that Trey Pipkins is going back to right tackle. So I just think, with the guys that they have, I'm with you. I don't think they're going to be making any needle moving moves this late, just because there really isn't anybody available to do that.
And honestly, it's still, even after the David Sharp signing, might be more likely that they go and sign another tackle who's more high caliber than they actually try to bring in a guard, because of what they feel like their versatility is at that position. Having Bozeman, who they think can play both, and Zion, who can't really play both, but they're trying him at both, and Jamari, who has some tackle flexibility as well. I think they feel like they're good in that regard, which is scary. But unfortunately, what I think the case is, and I think especially on the offensive line, there's just only so late you can add someone to realistically integrate them into your offense.
Yeah.
If it was going to happen, it would have to happen like this week, in my opinion, to have like a real shot at somebody challenging for a starting spot on this team. But we still have more to get into, including, after missing this last game and struggling in his first performance, could Junior Colson potentially be on his way out as a 2024 third-round pick? And what are the chances that a Nikko Reed and an Eric Rogers can make the roster? We're getting into all that and more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. August 26th, mark it on your calendar. It is officially FanDuel Futures Day, a brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions and preseason hunches. For just 24 hours, FanDuel is giving you deals on the NFL season predictions. So whether you're calling your MVP, eyeing a long shot division winner, or ready to crown your Super Bowl champ, before week 1 even kicks off, this is your moment. You can take a flyer on the MVP race. Can Lamar Jackson bounce back and take his crown back? Or could a dark horse like Justin Herbert enter his name into the conversation? Or maybe you go with the Super Bowl pick. Is it going to be the Eagles who run it back? Is this finally the years the Bills get it done? So many fun things with the FanDuel Futures Day. Or you could parlay your division winner dark horses. I can't wait to see what the Chargers' chances are to win the AFC West. But the Chargers, you can also have been a wagon. You can still bet on them in the preseason right now if you want their 3.5-point favorites this weekend against the Rams, who are coming off their own double-digit victory. But visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets now, because Futures Day is one day and one day only. FanDuel, play your game. David, we still have more to get into, but thank you to everyone for checking out today's show. We appreciate the everydayers out there as always, and thank you for always making us your first listen. If you need a second listen and you want some help with FanDuel, make sure to check out Locked On Bets. Betting experts Lee Sterling and Kevin Rogers have daily MLB locks and can't miss football futures. Find Locked On Bets on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast from. Dave, let's continue this Buy or Sell Tuesday, getting into the overreactions and the storylines that we all have. We all overreact, even in the preseason. It just is what it is. But I do think that this one is an overreaction from We Are the Storm, saying buy or sell, Junior Colson gets cut and put on the practice squad to make room for an undrafted free agent. So first, I think you just can't assume that he's going to be on your practice squad. I mean, pre-draft priors are a real thing. When I say that, it means there is somebody out there that feels like they could fix him, and there's a very big likelihood, even after struggling and not playing much as a rookie, that another team would swoop him up instantly. If you're going
Definitely.
to not have him on the 53-man roster, you're just cutting him, and he's probably going to end up elsewhere. So that you thinking you're going to get him on the practice squad is very unlikely. Now, is there a chance he could actually get cut, David, was what the buy or sell is here?
No, absolutely not. There's no chance in God's green earth that he's going to get cut. Obviously, with something unforeseen and untalked about, notwithstanding. But as of right now, with the relationships with Coach Harbaugh, with Coach Minter being there, and really having that relationship, there's no way they're going to cut him. It's just not enough time, right? They know that things happen at different paces. Players, especially, we've seen it with the linebacker position with the Chargers. Players mature and they ascend at different times in their careers. Sometimes it takes a little bit more time for things to really click and for you to be able to go out there and play meaningful, really good quality football at the linebacker position. It's just one of those harder positions to transition from college to the pros. There's no chance that Junior Colson is getting cut in 2025.
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, still a 2024 third-round pick. I don't think it's possible that he gets cut. And I think the hard thing is it feels also impossible that he is going to be a starter for this team too at the same time, right? And I think it's probably spotlighted a little bit more because of how impressive these young linebackers have been. I mean, Marlo Wax, a guy we didn't get to talk enough about yesterday in the recap show, has been all over the place through a couple of games, also making an impact on special teams. Speaking of which, Amani Johnson, who is, kind of a safety linebacker hybrid. He's been super impressive too. Those guys combined for 19 tackles versus the Saints. So other guys have been impressing. Junior Colson struggled when he was out there and didn't play in the last game. And going back to his press conference, I don't know if you remember it specifically, but it was a little defiant. And I felt like, hey, this could go either one of two ways. Like, it's a chip on the shoulder he's using to drive himself, or like it's maybe somewhat of a lack of accountability, just from a standpoint of like the only answer was, oh, it was my body. It wasn't that the game was too fast. I just couldn't stay healthy and all those things. And you want to believe that, but like at the same time, it isn't just your body. When you're out there, you have to play better. And maybe your body, held you back from that a little bit, but the play we've seen from you just isn't good enough. And that's where you have to start. You have to be healthy too, and he hasn't been through 2 seasons, or 1+ season.
Yeah.
But I think the other thing is he's just got to be better when he is out there. But being not great when you are out there and missing time is the worst possible combination Junior Colson could have at this point. I still don't think that he's going to get cut and only going into his 2nd season. But let's go to this one I wanted to get in because we didn't get to talk about this guy yesterday. Buy or sell, the Chargers got another day 3 draft gem with safety RJ Mickens. David, what do you think?
Absolutely, yes. I love everything that I've seen from RJ Mickens, a guy who, as a safety, has been sticky in coverage. I feel like he's been a strong tackler in open space, and that's exactly what you want from a last line of defense type of defender. You want to have that trust that if somebody breaks away and you are one-on-one with that person in open field, that guy can get that guy on the ground and end that play. And I feel like RJ Mickens is that guy that can do that. And also, we already know what his applications are on special teams. If you want to be able to make a roster at the back end of any kind of 53-man, you have to be able to showcase the ability to make plays on special teams. Not only is he doing that, he's looking natural as a defender at the safety position. Man, it's just crazy to see the value that Joe Ortiz has been able to find at the back end of now 2 really, really good drafts.
Well, especially in the secondary, right? I mean, 2 rookie corners last year. You have RJ Mickens doing what he's doing as, almost a 7th round pick, a very late 6th round pick this year. Super impressive. And I'm right with you. And if the Chargers were counting on only carrying 4 safeties on this 53-man roster, how do you make the decision between him and Tony Jefferson, who's been better? Arguably better. Like that if you had to make a decision between those 2 dudes, I don't know what you would do. But it is interesting though, because the Chargers have played him 101 defensive snaps. It's almost 20 more than any other defender has played through 2 games. So you could look at that a couple of different ways. Hey, they still think he needs to prove something and they really want to get it fleshed out. Or they're trying to get him as many snaps in this system as they possibly can because they know they're going to need him at some point this season and they want him as ready as possible. But he has the 4th highest defensive grade on the team through 2 preseason games, only behind Tony Jefferson, Nikko Reed, and Eric Rodgers, 2 guys we're going to talk about. But after showing, some good in the first game, RJ Mickens, especially that touchdown saving open field tackle that we saw from him, he filled it up in the second game. 8 total tackles, a forced fumble, and a pass breakup that probably should have been a pick. Yeah. We might be really having some crazy conversations had he picked that one off and taken it back to the house. So I don't know how you can't keep 5 safeties because I don't know who you cut if you're not, and that's leaving out Kendall Williamson. I don't know how you can. And that's leaving out Kendall Williamson, who is, in many years has probably done enough to find himself on a roster spot through 2 preseason games, man. It's going to be really tough. That secondary has a ton of competition. But the cornerback competition is the one we have the most questions about. And this is from Justin Sisyphus Herbert. Buy or sell, Eric Rodgers or Nikko Reed actually makes the 53-man roster. This one is tough, David. What do you think?
It is horribly tough because I've really enjoyed the play of both these gentlemen, but
there's a lot of unknowns still, right?
The biggest unknown is that both of them are injured right now. I mean, Nikko Reed missed the last game, and Eric Rodgers went crazy for 58 minutes of that football game, and then got hurt basically at the end. I mean, I'm not saying specifically that amount of time, but it basically takes away almost as if he has any kind of significant injury or even any kind of mild injury, that's going to take his chances of making this roster right away, because one big performance is great. Like, it's fantastic, but anybody can have one big performance. It's about replicating that over time and being not just a blip, but a guy that's consistently making those plays night in and night out. And to be honest, before, the preseason game, nobody was even talking about him whatsoever. He wasn't on anybody's radar. He put himself on people's radar, but then he got hurt. And
Eric Rodgers, you're talking
Eric
about.
Rodgers, that is, of course. And then for Nikko Reed, again, he's been having a strong camp pretty much all together. So if it's between those two guys, as of right now, it's probably Nikko Reed that's making the roster over Eric Rodgers, just given the injury situation. But if both these guys are not healthy by the end, then neither one of them could make this 53.
Yeah, which sucks because, listen to this. Eric Rodgers has been targeted 5 times through 2 playoff games. He's allowed 0 receptions.
2 preseason
games. 2
games.
interceptions. Yeah, 2 preseason games. 0 receptions on 5 targets. 2 interceptions and 1 pass breakup.
Yeah, that'll play.
Nikko Reed in 1 game was targeted twice. He broke up a pass and he intercepted a pass and almost took it back for 6 too.
Yeah.
So that's what you're talking about here. The guys have literally done everything they possibly could. And it does feel like Nikko Reed's the more likely one just because we don't know what his injury is. And even that, we have no idea if he'll be back this week. We just know that Eric Rodgers was on crutches. So
yeah,
it'll be interesting to see if there's a way for the Chargers to kind of get around things. Maybe, one goes on the physically unable to play list beforehand and, they wait another 4 weeks to see if they can get one of these guys back. But the thing is, if you don't bring them up onto the active roster after that time period, that means they go on the season-ending injured reserve. So that is something you will see if they try to kind of mess around, because it feels like both those guys could have pushed either one of Dean Leonard or Jasir Taylor for a roster spot, and both those guys have far outplayed 7th-round pick Triquez Bridges, who hasn't done much to make a case at this point. So really heartbroken for these dudes. Hopefully the Chargers, because there's still a lot of questions in that Chargers cornerback room. Like Dante Jackson, graded out terribly last year. Cam Hart and Tariq still both were rookies last year. We don't have a huge sample size of those guys yet. Benjamin St. Juste has also been bad, or was bad at least last season. So those guys also with Jasir Taylor and Dean Leonard, who are more special teams players than they are actual cornerbacks, you have room to get some guys for the future potentially, or guys that, you can't afford to be losing playmakers is what I'm trying to say there. These guys can legitimately play even as undrafted free agents. You have to find a way to keep them around, because you could have, diamonds in the rough, and I think I'd still rather take a chance on one of those guys than guys that we already kind of know what they are, potentially, in Dean Leonard and Jasir Taylor. So hopefully those guys can get back, right, and get one game in, be able to play in the last 2 games, and they'll give themselves a chance. That's all we want, man, because, man, both of them, it feels like any other year, if they were healthy right now, they probably would have already locked themselves up a roster spot. But this is a very competitive roster, maybe the deepest we've seen since covering the Chargers. But that's going to wrap things up for today's show. To make sure you never miss the next one, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from. Thank you to all the everydayers who hit us up and got your contributions on today's show by hitting us up at Locked On LIC, where we post the show every day, at Locked On Chargers, and our Locked On Chargers Facebook page. You can also call into the voicemail line at 323-524-7924. We'll have those fired up by the next fan show. But we'll see what we get from practice. There was supposed to be a joint practice this week with the Rams that got canceled because the Chargers are so banged up. We'll see what kind of notes we can get out of the practices this week, and we'll be back with the latest as the only daily Chargers podcast that's out there. But we'll be back with you guys tomorrow. Until then, take it easy and go Bolts.